Greetings from South Korea. I am Arirang News AI anchor. Here is the news-making headlines today. U.S. President Donald Trump hinted that peace talks between the United States and Iran could resume within the next 2 days after the collapse of weekend negotiations. Trump said on Tuesday in an interview with the New York Post that a second round of talks between the United States and Iran could be happening over the next 2 days in Pakistan. He also said he did not support reports that the U.S. had proposed a 20-year suspension of Iran's nuclear activity, emphasizing that he favors a permanent ban on enrichment. Meanwhile, Lebanon and Israel opened their first direct diplomatic talks in decades on Tuesday in Washington. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who took part in the meeting, called it a historic opportunity to end the influence of Hezbollah in the region. Import prices in South Korea surged in March, posting their sharpest increase in more than 28 years, driven by soaring global oil prices amid the Middle East conflict. Preliminary data from the Bank of Korea on Wednesday showed the import price index jumped 16.1% on month, accelerating sharply from a 1.5% rise in February. It marks the steepest increase since January 1998 and the ninth consecutive monthly gain since July of last year. On a yearly basis, import prices climbed 18.4%. The surge was largely fueled by a spike in Dubai crude, South Korea's benchmark, which soared nearly 88% on month to $128.52 per barrel in March. A weakening Korean won against the US dollar has also added to import costs, compounding inflationary pressures for the economy. Seoul plans to provide Iran with $500,000 of humanitarian aid amid the ongoing Middle East crisis. The Foreign Ministry announced the decision on Tuesday, saying the support will be delivered through the International Committee of the Red Cross in response to requests from the United Nations and other international bodies. This marks South Korea's second round of assistance to the region since the outbreak of the conflict, with the first government-level aid package worth $2 million provided to Lebanon last month. During a phone call between Foreign Minister Jo Hyun and his Iranian counterpart last week, the two sides reportedly shared an understanding on the need for humanitarian assistance. In its April World Economic Outlook released on Tuesday, the International Monetary Fund maintained South Korea's 2026 economic growth forecast at 1.9%. The figure remains unchanged from its January projection, standing firm despite a downgraded outlook for the global economy. South Korea's inflation rate for the year was projected at 2.5%. The IMF and the South Korean government note that while downward pressures persist from rising energy prices linked to the Middle East conflict, robust exports and the swift execution of a 26.2 trillion won or roughly $19 billion supplementary budget have cushioned the impact. Globally, the economic picture is darkening. The IMF lowered its 2026 global growth forecast to 3.1%, down 0.2 percentage points from its January projection. President Lee Jae-myung has vowed to streamline regulations for cutting-edge technology industries to allow them to perform all actions that are not specifically prohibited. Presiding over a meeting on regulations on Wednesday, President Lee called for the need to streamline unnecessary regulations in a way that fits the global standard to enhance the country's global competitiveness. During the meeting, the Regulatory Reform Committee was renamed as a so-called Regulatory Rationalization Committee. The meeting was attended by more than 60 participants, including government officials, lawmakers, and businesses. That is all from me today. Thank you for watching.